It's about your willingness to just keep going, recognizing that there's only a certain number of years you have on this planet. There's only so many hours in a day. And if you spend your days and your hours doing things you despise doing in order to just, let's say, provide for yourself, providing for yourself is great. But what if the good Lord gave you provision for something else? It says that your gifts shall make a way for you.
If you actually took time to learn about how incredible you were, nothing would ever stop you.
Great day as always. We hope this finds you well. My name is JamesAdlam and welcome to the channel. The design of this is to give you information, exposure, conversations that can help you and those that you care about, those that you work with, go to another level. You get value out of this. Make sure that you like, subscribe, that you join this community of people that are thinking ahead, are progressive. And this leads me to the topic for today, because I want to give everyone perspective about failure. So I just want you to just listen to what I'm going to share with you. Right now, Colonel Sanders had his chicken recipe rejected 1,009 times before one restaurant was willing to accept it. Steve Jobs had every major cell phone network say no to iPhone until AT&T gave it a chance. Vincent van Gogh, one of the most famous artists in history, sold only one painting in his lifetime. The Beatles were rejected by every major record label until they were given one opportunity with one deal. Henry Ford had 5 different businesses fail before getting the concept for Ford Motor Company. Emily Dickinson had sold less than a dozen of her 1,800 poems in her lifetime. Less than a dozen. Dr. Seuss' first book was rejected by 27 publishers. Sir Isaac Newton struggled in school and was labeled uneducated by his instructors. Elvis Presley was told by his music teacher he couldn't sing. Steven Spielberg was rejected by USC School of Cinematic Arts multiple times. And look, R.H. Macy, like Macy's that you go to today, had 7 businesses fail before Macy's actually succeeded. Socrates was considered an immoral corrupter of youth, and the Athenian government wanted to have him executed. Charles Schulz, Peanuts, Charlie Brown, had every cartoon he submitted rejected by his high school yearbook. Ludwig van Beethoven was told by his music teacher that he would never succeed in composing. Claude Monet, whose works have sold for millions, tens of millions of dollars, was rejected by the Paris Salon. Walt Disney was told that a mouse character would never work. Jack London received over 600 rejections before selling his first story. Fred Astaire, one of the most famous dancers in history, was told by a studio executive that he couldn't act or sing and barely dance. Look, we can go on and on and on. We could talk about how Carrie, Stephen King's first book, was rejected 30 times. And James Dyson vacuums, had 5,126 prototypes before his vacuum cleaner succeeded. So why am I saying this? Why are we having this conversation? Why did I just go through that long list? I went that long list for a reason. It's really simple. Because maybe you haven't failed enough. Maybe you haven't failed enough. Look, we have this perception, and I understand why we have this perception, because this perception is being created by media, social media, whatever, that like the success formula is so simple, and the first time you attain it, the first time you go for it, it's going to work out. And that is totally false. That is totally false. That is not the case. That's never been the case. In reality, everyone who's ever made it, at whatever level they've made it to, has absolutely, without question, failed and failed abundantly. Here's my question for you. How many times have you failed for whatever you're going for? How many times? How many people have said no to you? How many rejections have you received? Because for most people, it's not that many. They sing in the shower, they have a beautiful voice, and they say, man, I want to be a singer. They go to perform. One person says no, they're totally deflated. They want to act, they stop because whatever the reason is. People have innate gifts but unfortunately, most people just don't fail enough. You see, I don't look at failure as being an endpoint. I look at failure as a necessary step in the process. So, for instance, if you look at like Dyson and those vacuum cleaners that, made billions of dollars, all right? What you have to think to yourself about is, man, it takes something really significant to fail at something so many times and still have the wherewithal to keep going. I mean, for most people, it would be 3 or 4 times and I'm done. This guy failed at making his vacuum cleaner over 5,126 times before actually getting the prototype right to then become a mega success in an industry. Over 1,000 times, Colonel Sanders is going to restaurant after restaurant like, hey, would you buy my chicken? Would you buy my chicken? No, don't do this. It goes back, adds something else, goes back. Like, at what point did you decide the number of times you would go for it before you stopped? And everyone on here has had a stopping point. Something you were going for, you were excited about it, you did it 3 times, did it 10 times, maybe did it 5 times. I don't know what your number was, but at a certain point, you just stopped. You stopped and you went on to do something else. There's a guy that I know who had this amazing idea for himself and for the life he wanted. And he wanted to be a forest ranger. He wanted to be out in the woods, and he studied to become a forest ranger. He would go sleeping in the woods when we were at university just because he loved being with nature and all this other stuff. He submitted applications, didn't get the response he wanted. He's kind of moved to the back of the list. Now he's an accountant. Can you think of anything worse for someone who wants to be a forest ranger than being an accountant? No. How many times have you allowed yourself to fail towards whatever it is you want to do? Did you actually give yourself enough time? You had this idea for a business. You attempted it. You did it really hard for 30 days. Really hard for a year. Maybe for 2 years. I don't know. But at a certain point, you stopped, even though it's still inside of you right now as you're watching this. Right now, as I'm talking, you're already thinking about what it is that you stopped at, and you question, should I have kept going? And the fact that you're questioning it means that you know you should have kept going. And the fact that you're watching this to this point means you could probably keep going. It's about your willingness to just keep going, recognizing that there's only a certain number of years you have on this planet. There's only so many hours in a day. And if you spend your days and your hours doing things you despise doing in order to just, let's say, provide for yourself, providing for yourself is great. But what if the good Lord gave you provision for something else? It says that your gifts shall make a way for you. What if there's something else, the thing that you're thinking about right now, and it doesn't have to make you $1 million, but it is the thing that lights you up. It is the thing that calls to you. Here's what I'm going to imagine. I'm going to imagine when Dr. Seuss was coming up with these characters like the Cat in the Hat, I'm going to assume he didn't think he'd become the best-selling child's author in history. I don't think that was probably on his list. I think he had this vision of being able to create an amazing product for kids, and it was burning inside of him. And there was no effort for him to draw out these characters. There was probably joy around drawing out these characters. What would have been effort would have been knowing he was supposed to be drawing out these characters, telling these stories, and ending up as an engineer. You see, because for him, that's not him. If you want to be a great engineer, a great accountant, a great doctor, that's great. But if you're called to be Dr. Seuss and you end up as an accountant, you are suffering every single day. Here's my question for you. At what point did you stop allowing yourself to fail? We have this perception, because it's all over. You look at these stories and these people say the same thing. I had this idea on Monday. I did it on Tuesday. I made $1 million on Wednesday. And if you follow me and buy my course for whatever amount of money, I'm going to teach you how to become a 72-hour millionaire as well. And you don't do it. And it doesn't happen that way. Because what they didn't tell you was they started it on Monday, 2022, and they figured out how to really do it Monday or Wednesday, 2026. That's what you didn't hear that part, because that's not sizzle enough. Everyone, it's process. It's process. Your life in this world was 9 months of process. Now, there's process before that process, but the actual you being here, 9 months before you showed up. 9 months of developing you as a human being. Then you show up in the world, and now you've got to figure out what you're going to do in this world. You've got to figure out who you're going to be in this world, what you're interested in this world. You got to figure all that stuff out. But if you are unwilling to embrace that failure, as we define it, is actually false, it's a part of the process. Getting the formula wrong and refining it is a new opportunity to get it right. The thought that I tried and it didn't work is lazy talk. It's lazy talk for people that aren't willing to deal with their own emotions and to keep moving forward in spite of. And these people struggle every day because they live every day wondering what would have happened if I would have. But there's certain things you're no longer able to do. Like if you knew you're supposed to be an amazing football player and you stopped trying because whatever happened, got injured, got it. It's dope. That's a physical thing. It's done. You're not able to physically do that anymore. But for most people, it's actually not physical. It's mental. There's a book that you know you're supposed to be writing, but you haven't written it because you talked to some people and they said, and then you believed what they said, and then next thing you know, you can't go forward and da 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 da. But you've had this book in your head, you've had this invention in your head, and you've had this thought in your head, and all these things in your head. And the only problem is that they're in your head because you're avoiding. You're avoiding, and you've got to stop avoiding. You're gonna mess it up. It's supposed to be messy. Life. Hey, you ever watch a child born? That is messy. That's messy. But when you look at your children, do you just flash back to that day, or do you look at your children? The failure that you're avoiding is the process you're supposed to be going through to break through to the you that you're actually supposed to be. And if you give up at the first, second, 50th, hey, I don't know how long it's going to take. But man, it's so much better to be in pursuit of something that calls to you and your spirit and to make it work. Maybe it doesn't work the way you wanted it to, but you just kept moving forward. I'm not saying sell your house, sell everything you have. That's not what I'm saying. To do this thing, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is this. Is it really failure? Is it? Is it really failure? Or is it process? And if you can flip your thinking from that I'm failing at something to recognizing, no, this is just process. Whatever this is, it's part of the process. It is necessary. It is a necessary. Then the other side of it is you get what you want. Embrace it. It's the best part of the process. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say this. I have learned more when things didn't work than when things work, they just work. But when something doesn't work, you learn more when things don't work that you're able to apply for the rest of your life. I had this conversation with this gentleman, and he was talking to me about his wife, and it's his second marriage. And you know, his first marriage, they were together for 4 years, and his current wife, they've been married for 16 years. And I said, what was the difference? Like, because he was open about it. He's like, yeah, married, da, 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 da. And I said, what was the difference between then and now? He said, man, that's a really good question. He's like, I actually have the answer. Here's what he told me. He's like, the first time I thought everything had to be a particular way. The second time, current wife, he realizes that it's all process, that nothing is fixed. It's all process. And what they decided to do was to make a conscious effort to be the best that they could individually for the other person. But he would have never learned that had he not had his first marriage. Consider it your first business. Consider it your first sport, and you went out and you did your first tryout and it didn't work. Whatever it is, the first that doesn't work doesn't have to mean it can never work. It just means you need to continue to work. It's not failure, it's process. Hope you got value out of this. Do me a favor, make sure that you comment, because I love to see and learn from you. I want to know, what are the things that you know that you've learned about yourself that you know you need to be doing, and do it. There's no value in not doing it. Just comment. Love to have a chance to see where your lives are, where your minds are. Take care. God bless.
If you actually took time to learn about how incredible you were, nothing would ever stop you. See, the definition of sight is the faculty or power of seeing.